On Module 5, we've got the next objective to do, which is 5 Echo, identify basic facts about radio etiquette. We're going to be looking at getting at least 70% on the Keys Progress Check KPCs. The Air Force application process is when you are on a radio, because some days you're just going to have to use one. Not all the time, but you're going to have to use one in your either short or long-term career. The overview will be radio etiquette, some common sense measures to follow, 4 golden rules of radio comm, the NATO phonetic alphabet and numbers. Take a look at one of these. Bottom line here about radio etiquette is the international language is English. Biggest thing that everybody has to conform to is because the air traffic controllers throughout the world use English. Now, using a radio, you're going to end up having one that's going to transmit or receive, not both at the same time. And you can follow along in your study guide workbook along these common sense rules. Just remember, do not interrupt people that are talking, and this is where the key comes into play. When you're doing that particular etiquette, you got to wait to finish. But if it is an emergency, you literally have to go into, when they're talking, you're going to use the 3 words, break, break, break. Get everybody's attention with that, and then you're going to say what the emergency. Normally, if it's let's say it's a exercise, there's been an unexploded ordnance out there. You're going to break, break, break. Unexploded ordnance, but most of the time with that particular scenario, you're going to back away where they classify as safety, and I think it's 300 feet before you can make that transmission. Just remember, don't respond to calls. If you are unsure who it is, let me explain on that one. If someone has called and you didn't quite hear them, just let it ride. Normally, they will come back and do the same thing if no one's contacted them. If you are unsure the second time, you can go, please say again, or last caller, please say again. And normally that's an indication to whoever just made that call, they can go ahead and repeat what they were asking for. This next one is a classic. Never transmit sensitive, confidential, financial, or military information over unsecured nets. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now, there is appropriate encryption levels for each one of these tiers. You got FOUO and confidential. Normally, that's something that I have come in contact with DSXL. That is a lower form of encryption that you can do that over, but you can't pass secret or top secret over. There is what we call encryption devices that can pass secret. I don't know what the name of them, what they are now, but there's also one that is top secret, and those things are really held close to that person. With secret, you got to hang on to that radio. You can't let it go somewhere else or leave it and not get in trouble for leaving it. So just letting you know that when you are in charge of anything that has encryption in it, you're going to be responsible for that particular device. Let's look at some other common sense rules to follow. We got perform radio checks, ensure battery is charged, make sure that you got the volume high enough so you can hear it. If you're in a loud place, and say you're in a transmitter site, there's going to be a lot of high-pitched shrills, probably an LPA going off with a fan, so you're going to need to turn that radio up a little bit. For call signs, just remember you've got call signs out there. Sometimes I've seen people who are just brand new, they'll write down all the call signs and where they are, locations of personnel, and of course where your base radios are. Normally when we get online, we call everybody by their call signs. We do not call them out by their personal name. Just remember, every time you get ready to key, think before you speak. Make sure that you decide what to say and to whom. There are call signs. Depending on what base you're at, they may have a standard procedure for that. Most bases I have been at, you can use anything from the Marine to the Army, different, what we call radio etiquette, the way they want you to do it. You know, you may be dispatched with the Army, you're going to adhere to them. I've been in places where they don't adhere to it, but they still have some loose ties to those two particular radio etiquette and the way you speak over the radio. As far as comm, make sure it's clear, precise, and concise. Avoid long sentences. Divide if necessary. If you got to transmit, let's say, a paragraph, about 2 sentences in, just say, I think the common phrase is break, pause for a second, and then continue on. Don't use abbreviations unless they're understood by others. Okay? There's been some that's been out there, at least on my experience. We'll use something like the Delta Whiskey, which is dependent wife in our little area, or Delta Sierra, dependent spouse. That's another one I've seen. So those are just things that, if you're going to say them, make sure everybody else understands what you're saying. There are 4 things that we like to say golden rules of radio communications, which apply to the common sense ones. Clarity, make sure that your voice is clear. Simplicity, make sure that the message is simple. Brevity, be precise. Security, again, cannot emphasize. You want to give that the FOUO, make sure that you got DESXL. And of course, if it's secret, the appropriate encryption and top secret. So there is a level of what you can and cannot say over the radios as far as military and personal information. Next up, we have the NATO phonetic alphabet and numbers. This one I have used since 1983, and I haven't seen it change. This is what the Army uses, the Marine uses, the Navy uses, and what we use, as well as the Coast Guard. Now, there's some derivatives on these on the outside. For example, I point to D as in Delta. I've heard dog. I've heard Charlie was, no, Alpha was, Apple was another one for that one. So there are some differences, but in our case, since we're in the military, we use that because we may have allies that when we brief them, that's what we're going to use when we spell out a word. So we've gone over radio etiquette, some common sense rules to follow, the 4 golden rules of comm, and of course the NATO phonetic alphabet numbers.